Okay, so we're going to get started. So welcome everyone. I know it's been a little bit since I was last here, but I'm excited to be back. Today we're going to be discussing anti-inflammatory eating. So we've got lots to cover today, but I am going to try to leave some room to ask questions as we go if you'd like, and I will also try to leave some room at the end for you as well, so we can cover any questions that might come up. I do encourage you to take notes as we go, that way you've got some information to take home with you. And yeah, let's get started. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Cheryl. I'm the in-store dietitian at the Zehrs in Kingsville and the one on Malden Road. So a few of my niche areas or areas that I like to focus in, or areas of continued growth, as one of my colleagues likes to say, which I really like, is chronic disease prevention and management, sport nutrition, and weight management. So a little bit about, kind of the way I like to work with clients is I do take a non-diet approach. So rather than focusing on things that we want to take out or restriction, I like to focus more on what we can add in and add in some balance into your daily eating. I think it's really important that, we still make sure that you are enjoying the food that you're eating, because you have to eat every day and it would be horrible if you didn't enjoy the food. And just making those small changes that'll create long-lasting healthy habits. So yeah, like I said, my areas of continued growth are those three that I have listed. Sometimes I get asked about sport nutrition. The reason why I include sport nutrition is because I have a background in kinesiology. I did human kinetics at the University of Windsor, and that's a sport-based program. So it was kind of a natural, easy progression for me to kind of narrow in as one of my focuses. All right, so taking a look at some of the services that we offer as the Zehrs dietitians, we have personalized nutrition consultations. Actually, starting today, we have a promo going on for 50% back in PC Optimum points. And that is valid until May 17th. So it's a really good deal if you are interested or if you collect points. That's probably one of the better deals that we do offer. We have our next nutrition workshop coming up, which is on May 19th. Same time, same place. That one is going to be on eating for a healthy gut. We also offer virtual corporate lunch and learn presentations. So those are really great for businesses who want to start like a colleague wellness program or just do something kind of fun for their colleagues. And then we've got a variety of different webinars coming up. One called Ditch the Diet, which is on Tuesday, April 26th at 6 till 7 p.m. And that is hosted by myself and one of my dietitian colleagues. It's a really, really great webinar. It's all about kind of leaving the diet mentality behind and thinking of changing your eating more as a lifestyle habit or a lifestyle change. The next one we have is Craving Change, which is hosted by a couple of my other colleagues. That one is really great as well. It has a lot of suggestions on how to change your habits around eating. And we also have Gut Instincts coming up May 24th. That is also hosted by a couple of my colleagues, and that one is focused on gut health. So lots going on. If you do have any questions about any of these webinars, please feel free to let me know. If you want to know how to register or the cost or anything like that, just let me know and I can help you out with that. Oh, and a lot of these do have points promos attached to them. I'm not 100% sure which points promos are coming up when and for what and all that kind of stuff, but they often do have points promos. So again, if you are someone who likes to collect points, that is something else to take a look at. Okay, so on the agenda for today, we are going to be talking about inflammation, of course. So what is it? Different types of inflammation, what foods we can incorporate into our diet that are going to reduce inflammation, ideas to boost intake of those foods, and then we're going to talk a little bit about added sugars as well. Okay, so jumping in, we're going to get started on what is inflammation. So does anyone have any words that come to mind when I say inflammation, or anything that you might think of when we are talking about inflammation?
Getting sick.
Yeah, it's often associated with, some kind of sickness or ailment.
Swelling.
Yeah, swelling, yeah.
Soreness.
Yeah, exactly. So inflammation is the body's natural response to protect itself against harm. So all those things that you guys brought up, those would be considered like a harm to your body, and inflammation is the body's response to that. So inflammation can also be acute and chronic, which we're going to look at a little bit further. And a good way to think of it is I like to compare inflammation to like a fire, which is why I have the picture of fire there. In controlled amounts, there's no question that fire keeps us warm, healthy, and protected. But when there's too much fire, or if the fire gets out of control, it can be damaging. So inflammation kind of acts the same way. The saying of too much of a good thing, that can apply to inflammation. All right, so like I said, there's two different types of inflammation. We have acute or chronic. Acute is when the immune system reacts with redness and swelling to short-term pain incidents. So that could be if you've banged up your knee, or if you've cut your finger, usually you'll get some redness, maybe some swelling around that area, exactly like what you were talking about, and that would be inflammation. So that could last, maybe it lasts a few minutes, maybe it lasts a few days. However, if it continues, if the inflammatory process is kind of prolonged, that can lead to chronic inflammation. So chronic is when the immune system reacts to unwanted substances in the body. So an example of that could be like cigarette smoke. Chronic inflammation can last months to years and can be due to many reasons, such as infection, exposure to harmful products, autoimmune diseases, even stress. And that can lead to chronic diseases like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, cancer, respiratory diseases, arthritis, Alzheimer's, and more. So it is worked into all kinds of different things that maybe we didn't really think of before. But it really does have an effect, and can be something that causes something that leads to some of those chronic diseases. So it is often without any obvious symptoms. If you do smoke, or if you do have one of these diseases, you don't necessarily see the side effects first, right? You don't smoke and then all of a sudden feel it. It's one of those things that kind of lasts longer. It can last weeks, months, or years. And chronic inflammation can be a risk factor, like I said, for specifically cardiovascular disease, cancer, and diabetes. So the good news is that many foods contain nutrients that have anti-inflammatory properties and can therefore help reduce inflammation in the body. So let's explore some of these foods a little bit further. Any questions about the acute and chronic inflammation? Or anything we've talked about so far? Okay, good to go. All right, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is produce. So a diet high in fruits and vegetables is one of the best defenses against inflammation. Fruit and vegetables are a highly bioavailable source of vitamins and minerals, fiber, and polyphenols with anti-inflammatory activity. So when I say bioavailable, it means that our bodies are able to get those nutrients that we're talking about easily out of them. So when we eat them, we're able to pull those nutrients out really easily. So here I wanted to highlight some common anti-inflammatory nutrients and what foods they are highest in. So vitamin C is the first one there, found in red peppers, broccoli, kiwi, oranges, tomatoes, and mangoes. Vitamin E is found in avocado, almonds, peanut butter, cooked spinach. Polyphenols. So polyphenols, that might be, something that you don't hear of as often as vitamins C and E, but there are multiple types, and I've listed some of the food sources. Two of the types are flavonoids and lignans. So there's multiple types of flavonoids as well, but you can find them in hesperidin, which is a specific type of flavonoid. You can find that in citrus. Quercetin can be found in apples and onions. Catechins can be found in tea, and anthocyanins can be found in berries. So those are all kinds of flavonoids that can be found in various produce items. Lignans can be found in flax seeds, and resveratrol can be found in berries and grapes. One that I also want to highlight on here is turmeric. So turmeric, or curcumin, as you see like kind of next to it in brackets, curcumin is found in turmeric. It is a specific polyphenol that has been shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. The main limitation of curcumin is its poor bioavailability. Because it has a poor water solubility, it is not absorbed very well. It's rapidly metabolized and then rapidly eliminated. So to help with this, you might want to pair curcumin or turmeric with black pepper. Black pepper has a compound in it called piperin. That's the active component of black pepper. And it has been shown to increase the bioavailability of curcumin by 2,000%. So that's a huge increase for something that's not very bioavailable to us. So adding black pepper and turmeric together can really improve the absorption of that anti-inflammatory property in turmeric. And then because curcumin is fat soluble, consuming it with fat might also help as well. So if you have it with a little bit of oil, say if you're cooking something, add a little bit of oil in there, black pepper, your turmeric, it'll set you up for better bioavailability of that anti-inflammatory product. So some ways to use turmeric could be in curries, roasted cauliflower, eggs, salad dressing, poultry, and seafood. And I just want to talk about dosing quickly for turmeric. So the dose recommended is a little bit hard to determine just because of different studies coming up with different results. The doses of curcumin presented in like a bigger meta-analysis concluded that 8 to 10 weeks of 1,000 milligrams of curcumin per day could reduce pain and inflammation-related symptoms of arthritis. The FDA considers curcumin safe up to 8 grams per day. Health Canada recommends a maximum dose of 1,200 milligrams per day and a maximum of 400 milligrams per dose. So you would be taking it separately. However, this is also based on an old study, so the dosing is it's not super clear at this time. And just if that is something that you are interested in taking, some medical conditions to be aware of when suggesting curcumin supplements include pregnancy, gallstones, bile duct obstruction, stomach ulcers, or excess stomach acid. And some medications to be aware of are antiplatelet medications and blood thinners. So anytime you are starting a supplement, I always recommend to check with your healthcare provider, your doctor, pharmacist beforehand, because they are able to take a look at what you've got going on, your medication list, because there's all kinds of interactions that can happen, things that we don't even think of. So always check with them first before you do start a supplement, okay? So that was a lot of information. Do we have any questions? No? All right.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is turmeric and curcumin the same, or?
So curcumin is in turmeric, and that's the anti-inflammatory property inside turmeric. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. So, can anyone tell me approximately how many fruits and vegetables they should have in a day? It's kind of a tricky question, but if you've been to some of these before, you might have an idea. 6? Roughly. That's not bad. So actually, we've kind of changed it over because we've gone away from counting things. I know it was a tricky question. And now we're using this plate model. So looking at the plate model, you can see that whole side there, the whole 1/2, is filled with lots of beautiful fruits and vegetables. So at every meal, wherever, when possible, it's not going to happen at every meal. If we're being realistic, it's just not going to happen every single time. But at each meal, it is recommended, when possible, you want to focus on filling about half of your plate with fruits and vegetables, and then 1/4 of your plate with protein and 1/4 with whole grains. So if you follow this guide, it is likely that you will be having enough fruits and vegetables throughout the day. Something else to keep in mind is, like I said, all the beautiful colors that you see in there. And having a variety of colors in your fruits and vegetables means you're getting a variety of different nutrients. So something to keep in mind, you know that saying, when you eat with your eyes? That kind of applies to this. You want to eat with your eyes first. When you see a nice, bountiful plate with all these beautiful colors on it, it looks pretty. It's also going to be good for you. So this abundance of fruits and vegetables can also be applied to snacks. So when you are making a snack, and we have covered this before, so I apologize if it's repetitive, or it could be a good refresher. So when you are making snacks, you want to aim for half fiber-rich foods, which could be fruits, vegetables, or whole grains, and half protein-rich foods. So this is a good opportunity to incorporate those fruits and veggies, and even other plant-based products. So if you wanted to try adding in plant proteins, you can see some are pictured on the plate there. There's some beans and legumes on the plate. There's some nuts and seeds on the plate. There's even soy products on there. That would be a good opportunity to incorporate those as well. Okay, any questions? Yes?
Under the protein,
Yes.
what kind of nuts are we referring to that would be the better choice? Walnuts or?
Well, if you're looking for specifically protein, I'm trying to think of which one would have the highest amount. I know, not specifically a nut, but I know pumpkin seeds are really high in protein. That's a good one. I'm trying to think, though, which nut might be highest. I might have to come back to you with that, because I'm trying to think, and it's not coming to me. I think, yeah, let me double check for you. But pumpkin seeds are quite high, and actually edamame, I don't know if you guys have ever had edamame, but those are a good source of protein as well. They're actually like baby soybeans, and they're easy to throw into, salads or all kinds of stuff, really. You can just snack on them themselves, and those are a good source of protein too. Okay, so adding fruits and veggies to meals. So we're gonna take a look at some different ways that you can add them in, just some suggestions. And I also invite you to share your suggestions with me if you've got, fun ways to add in some fruits and veggies. The first one is to mix half your pasta with spiralized veggies. So you don't have to take all your pasta and turn it into a spiralized veggie. You can even swap out half. And that way you're still getting some of your regular pasta, but you're also increasing that veggie intake. Something else you can do is mix half your rice with crumbled cauliflower. same idea. And you can, like these products are shown, you can find these in the store, which is easy. It's a lot easier than, you know, trying to spiralize and crumble all your own stuff. But yeah, mixing in the rice especially, I find, and this might be because I'm very much a pasta person, but mixing in the crumbled cauliflower into the rice, I find you don't notice it a heck of a lot, but you are increasing that veg intake quite a bit. That's one of the ways that I like to do it, one of my favorites. Something else you can do is bulk up soups, stews, and sauces with veggies. Pack grab-and-go fruits and vegetables like baby carrots, broccoli or cauliflower florets, snap peas, cherry tomatoes, baby cucumbers, bananas, oranges, apple slices, pears, all that kind of stuff. Just easy snacks. You can bulk up your salads with PC, slaws, or mixed greens. So you can already buy them kind of packaged. And even if you have, you know, like a head of lettuce or something that you would like to use, you can always mix them together. Add cut up apple or grated carrot to oatmeal, and then adding berries to yogurt. That's another one of my favorites. I like to buy frozen berries, and actually we'll make like a meal out of it. Do frozen berries, some yogurt, some oats, and I find I buy plain yogurt, and I find the frozen berries kind of melts into it a little bit and flavors it really nicely. And then something to keep in mind is that frozen options are just as good as fresh. In terms of nutrients, of course, there is a personal preference if you don't like them, but a lot of times they're super useful to use. They have a good amount of nutrients in them, very comparable to fresh. And you can buy lots of different ones that, you know, maybe if you bought it fresh, it would spoil if you don't use it as frequently. So getting it in the frozen variety might be, you know, more to your benefit. Things like frozen kale, beets, pomegranate, avocado, because if you guys have ever bought fresh avocados, they will turn on you in an instant. So, and then, yeah, so those are a few different ones that, you know, maybe you haven't tried yet. Yes?
I just want to ask you a question about the crumbled cauliflower. Is that raw or cooked cauliflower that's crumbled?
You know, you add it to stir fries. So let me see. I don't think it's cooked, because it's, yeah, it would probably be raw. I'm trying to think, because when I use it, I just add it in with my rice when I'm cooking it. So, so I cook it anyways. Yeah, I think it's raw. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
I see you haven't mentioned bananas. I quite often roll slice of bananas in my yogurt.
Yeah, that's good too. Yep, bananas work, and that's another one too where it turns very easily. So actually, kind of later on in the presentation, we talk about sugars, and this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but when you have a banana that's turning and you freeze it, that's something that you can easily add into baking, and that could reduce some of the sugar, but we will talk about that a little later, okay? Yes?
Those frozen bananas are really disgusting to look at.
Yeah, not nice, not the greatest to look at. I actually would recommend, instead of freezing the whole banana, chop it up, like peel it and chop it beforehand and then freeze it. Much easier to work with if you've ever tried to peel a frozen banana. It's a huge pain. So I definitely recommend trying that, and then you don't have to, yeah, you don't have to look at it. Okay, all right, so we're gonna move on to whole grains. So whole grains, I'll just pop up a few of these here. All right, whole grains have a role in decreasing inflammation. So one of the things that I do want to go over, and again, we have touched on this before, but I want to talk about the differences between a whole grain, a refined grain, and enriched grains. So a whole grain has all the components that you see here: the bran, the endosperm, and the germ. So the bran and the germ carry a lot of fiber and nutrients in them. You're going to get some B vitamins in there. The bran layer has a good amount of fiber. Lots of nutrients packed into those areas. The endosperm, that like kind of whitish part, kind of looks like an egg to me, and I always consider this as like the egg whites, but it's not an egg, this is a grain. But the endosperm has a lot of, it's more starchy, like filled with carbohydrates. So the whole grain has all three components. A refined grain has the bran and the germ, usually both, removed. And then you're just left with your starchy endosperm. So when you remove it, you're losing out on those nutrients, right? So that's why one of the things that we always suggest is to go whole grain rather than refined, because refined, you often lose out on those. Now you can buy enriched grains, which will sometimes, enriched means adding back in. So they've taken out nutrients and then they add them back in. I would still say probably you're better off with the whole grains, because I don't think it's specified how much of that nutrient has been added back in. And you know, is it just the B vitamins that they're adding back, or are they adding back the fiber and the B vitamins, right? So a little bit tricky there. I would suggest opting for the whole grain itself. Any questions about any of that? No? Pretty straightforward? Okay. All right, so that's the difference between whole grain, refined, and enriching grains. So whole grains are also good for your gut bacteria because they help to ferment the sugars and creates byproducts that contribute to anti-inflammatory effects. And then to ensure a product is a whole grain, because a lot of times labels can use some tricky wording. You might see something that says multi-grain on it or 12 grain on it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's whole grain. So what you want to do is turn that product around and take a look at the ingredient list. So the ingredient list is kind of the tell-all of the product, your ingredient list and your nutrition label. So you want to look for one of the first ingredients in that list to say whole grain on it. So it might say whole grain flour. It might say whole grain oats or whatever it might be. But you always want to check. It should be one of the first ingredients in there that says whole grain. Because ingredient lists are listed by weight, so it's the greatest weight first, ending with the least. So if it's one of the first, you know that that makes up most of the product, okay? All right, and then I've also got a little fun fact about whole grains. You can freeze them after they're cooked, and it kind of makes for a much easier, more convenient meal in the future. So you can cook them and then freeze them, which is not something that personally I thought to do ahead of time before researching this. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then some meal ideas to incorporate whole grains into. You could try adding in quinoa to something like chili, help bulk it up a little bit. You can enjoy overnight oats for breakfast, which is what I was referring to a little bit earlier when I was saying I do oats and then yogurt and frozen berries. You just have to let it sit and soak for a little bit so that the oats aren't gritty. And then you can try a new whole grain in a salad. So I don't know if anyone's ever tried farro before, but farro's, it's a nice whole grain. It's got a little bit of a nutty flavor to it. And it goes great in if you're doing like a spinach and arugula salad or something like that. It's a nice hearty grain, adds a nice flavor. All right, the next one we're gonna be looking at is beans and lentils. So beans and lentils, again, they have that fiber in them that can help to decrease inflammation. So a suggestion for including beans and lentils is to aim for at least one meatless or less meat meal option per week to help increase your fiber intake overall. Beans and lentils can be a good meat substitute in many dishes. You can add them to soups, stews, salads, casseroles, meatloaf, shepherd's pie, Something that I hear often is when you have like ground meat, anything that's got like ground beef or ground turkey in it, a lot of times what you can do is cut that ground meat portion in half and substitute with lentils. So it's got a similar texture, and you know, you still have that meat in there, but just to increase your fiber and your plant intake, just substitute some of it for some lentils. And then some snack ideas would be edamame beans, hummus, roasted chickpeas. If anyone's ever had roasted chickpeas before, you can sprinkle all kinds of different seasonings on them. I've had them savory, I've had them sweet, but they are super yummy and very versatile. Some high fiber legumes, so the ones that are going to be higher in fiber, include black beans, lima beans, soy nuts, navy beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, and tofu. And if anyone has questions about dried versus canned lentils, oh, were you? So dried, more labor intensive, right, because you have to soak them, but they are usually less expensive. Canned are also good to use. You just want to try to buy ones that are canned in water or no salt added. If you do buy them that are, you know, regularly canned and they do have salt, you can rinse them off to try to reduce some of the salt in there.
Are they described the same fiber content, canned versus the bag of lentils?
Yeah, I would say they're the same. It's still the same bean, right? It's just one is already kind of like soaked for you. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
You're talking about the chickpeas.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy them like a snack that are crispy.
Yeah, you can buy them, or if you wanted to fry them, roast them yourself, you could do that as well. But you can find them they're in bags, and they've got different kind of flavors to them. Like I said, I think I've had some that were like cinnamon coated. I've also had some that were like a little bit spicy. So yeah, kind of depending on, you know, the flavor that you like. I think I've also seen lentils that way as well. I don't think I've personally tried the lentils, but I've tried the chickpeas.
But where would they be in the grocery store?
In our store, I think you can find them, I want to say in the natural value section.
The organic section, you mean? Or
Yeah, it's
somewhere?
yeah, it's got the green banners on it. I believe it's in there. I know for sure I've seen it at like Winners and HomeSense, but yeah.
Oh, okay, because I use the chickpeas, I add it to my chili, I add it to, like soups.
Yeah.
Things just for more protein and more protein.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's a perfect example of a
I've never had it like.
roasted like that.
Like a snack.
Yeah.
That might not be good though, I like this people. Taste that good.
Isn't it chickpeas that they make hummus?
Yes, yeah.
Now, is that a spread? Is that a spread for bread?
You could spread it on bread, but it's usually used as a dip. So yeah, hummus. Yeah, you can use crackers, pita bread. Yeah. Yeah, very tasty. You can also I actually really like snap peas. I know a lot of people like to use different veggies, but I really personally like snap peas because I find the crunch is nice. But red peppers, cucumbers, carrots, all kinds. It's very versatile, honestly. I grew up on hummus, and it is like one of my favorite things to eat. So I eat it with everything. Yeah. No, I'm not vegan. I eat everything. So. Yeah, you should be able to find them at Zehrs too. They should be yeah, unless we're for some reason out of stock, but they're normally carried there as well.
They're like chips. You can eat the whole bag.
Oh, you can. Yeah, you can buy them in like a fried form, I guess. I'm not. Or is it roasted? I can't even remember. But
They're in like a chip bag.
Yeah, they're in a chip bag, but you can buy like raw snap peas at the store, and those I really like with hummus because they're like fresh, and like I said, you've got that nice little snap to them. I don't know what it is. I find they pair really well. It might just be me. I know a lot of people like red peppers with it, but yes.
Do you suggest the red lentils or the brown lentils?
Honestly, I don't think it matters too much. Whatever your preference is.
Lentils and I like homemade turkey soup after Christmas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Thanksgiving, I always make homemade.
Oh, well, that sounds fantastic. But I would say whichever one you prefer is totally fine. It's really, you know, when it comes down to it, it's all about adding these things in, right? So whether you add one over the other, pick your preference because they no matter what, they're going to be beneficial for you with that fiber intake. Yeah.
Different recipe, I always look for trying different things. I made tacos with lentils. Lettuce and tomatoes, and just like you do a fish taco.
Yeah.
I had the lentils, and even my husband ate it too. He said it was pretty good.
Oh, wow. I might have to get that recipe from you. I also... Oh, okay, very cool.
The lentils is to soak them first, because I've never used,
I just use canned.
Right. Yeah. So any beans or legumes that you buy that are dried in the bag like that, you'll definitely have to soak them at least overnight to really soften them up. Otherwise, they're still going to be quite tough. I know I was soaking some chickpeas actually the other day, or I guess a week ago now. I was soaking them, and I even the next day went to go try them to see, and they were still a little bit hard. And then I was surprised at how long I had to soak them for. But I would say overnight and then check them. And yeah, hopefully they'll soften for you.
soak them in just water,
Yep, just water.
no salt. Well,
You don't really need the salt because they'll just absorb that water. They absorb, and actually one little tip that I kind of messed up on, make sure you leave yourself a little extra room because as they absorb the water, they expand. And when I came back to my chickpeas, the lid had risen right off. So yeah, so make sure you leave yourself a little bit extra room there. Any other questions about beans and lentils?
per person, quarter cup, will make enough for a meal?
It depends on what you're making. So if you, yeah, it really depends on what you're making. But if you are using them as like your main protein source, I would say aim for about a quarter of that plate, kind of like what we talked about. But I will say, if you are starting beans or lentils kind of for the first time, if you're not someone who's used them a lot before, just be careful because when you increase your fiber intake, that can upset your stomach if you don't also increase your fluid intake. So just be a little bit cautious of it. If it's not something, don't jump into like a quarter cup right off the bat. Make sure you have some water with it or else you might get a little stomach upset. Okay? All right, so now we're going to take a look at omega-3s. Omega-3 fatty acids play a large role in fighting inflammation. So they're a type of fatty acids that have many health benefits. They can help decrease inflammation by decreasing the production of inflammatory markers, and they are also implicated in the proper functioning of the immune system. So there's 3 different types of omega-3s, as you see here. So I want to talk about EPA and DHA first. These kinds of omega-3s are especially good for inflammation, but also heart health, because they lower your risk for heart disease, reduce blood pressure, help keep blood vessels and arteries from becoming stiff. They help prevent blood clots and help lower triglycerides, which are fats in your blood. More studies are needed to see if they're helpful in rheumatoid arthritis, mental health, and some other diseases. But the EPA and DHA are really good for your overall health. So ALA, These kinds of omega-3s are also a source of healthy fats. However, they don't improve your heart health as much as foods with EPA and DHA. In fact, ALA actually gets converted into EPA and DHA in your body, but this is a very inefficient process. So you need a lot more ALA than you would EPA and DHA. So, to kind of put that into perspective, for EPA and DHA, you need about 200 to 500 milligrams per day. For ALA, it's recommended 1,100 to 1,600 milligrams. So significantly more ALA to have somewhat similar effects as the EPA and DHA. Okay, and then we've got some.
Not be confused because I don't know what ALA is.
It's so we're going to talk about the food sources of them in just a second. But they're all different types of omega-3s, and they have very long names. It's like alpha linoleic acid. Then it's easier to just say ALA, EPA, and DHA. But we are going to talk about the food sources in just a second. So food sources of EPA and DHA include fatty fish, so salmon, trout, herring, mackerel, sardines, Arctic char, anchovies, all kinds of fatty fish. You can also get them in some seaweed and kelp products, but most people are probably more likely to have some fatty fish, and it's recommended to have about 2 servings per week. And then ALA you can find in nuts and seeds. So chia seeds, ground flax seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts, they all contain that ALA. Oils, so flaxseed oil, canola oil, walnuts, flax seeds. And then possible enriched foods. Now, these enriched foods could have either kind, so eggs, milk and yogurt, margarine, or juice. So, like I said, you want to double check the kind of omega-3 that is being added in. It would be better if it was the EPA and DHA that's added into your eggs, milk, and yogurt. So you always want to check the label for that to see what kind and how much has been added in. Okay. Any questions?
Salmon is excellent omega-3.
Yeah. Yes. So it's nice. There are some nice, tasty sources of the EPA and DHA, which makes it a little bit easier to get in.
Sardines, how can people eat those?
Yes.
I opened a can for the ALA.
Mm-hmm.
I make a smoothie in the morning with yogurt that doesn't have any sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And I add the chia seeds and the hemp hearts.
Yeah.
And, I guess pineapple is good for anti-inflammatory. That's why I was told. So I throw pineapple in
Mm-hmm.
there and spinach and cucumbers. And it tastes really good. It's green,
Yeah.
but it tastes good.
Yeah. No, that's
And
great.
I try that each morning. But the only thing with the EPA and DHA is I got a big jar of omega-3
Oh, the stuff.
capsules
Yep.
that are high in those.
Yep.
So the only thing about all the fish, those aren't my favorite fishes.
Mm-hmm.
But I might, go back to having a piece of salmon each week, but I'm not sure I could eat.
Yeah, and that's okay, right? That's why they make the omega-3 supplements with EPA and DHA, because it is limited, right? It's limited in the foods that we can have. So if you're not a fan of fatty fish, I will say though, omega-3 supplements can be contraindicated with certain medications, so such as blood thinners. So you definitely want to consult a pharmacist or, like I said, your doctor, your healthcare team before starting an omega-3 supplement. So just something to be aware of. Like I said, supplements, you always want to talk to a healthcare provider before starting a supplement. Someone that you've worked with who can kind of take a look at your medical history, take a look at your medications, and say, yes, this should be fine, or you know what, this actually interferes with another medication. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why they're so popular as a supplement, because it is limited what you can get it in. And it, like you said, if you're not a fan of fatty fish and not a fan of seaweed or kelp, then you know it's hard to get in. All right, next we're going to take a look at probiotics. So probiotics are live bacteria that may have health benefits when eaten in the right quantities. They decrease pro-inflammatory substances and promote anti-inflammatory substances. So some food sources include a lot of fermented products like yogurt, kefir, miso, tempeh, sauerkraut, kimchi, and kombucha, which sounds like a whole lot of fancy stuff, but you can find all these products in the store. Kefir, it kind of has a similar taste, I find, to like a Greek yogurt, but it's thin. Tempeh is, it's a soy product. Sauerkraut, I mean, personally, I really like sauerkraut, so sauerkraut is good. You can always find that in the grocery store. Kimchi and kombucha. Kombucha is like it's a fermented drink. It's kind of reminiscent of pop a little bit. A lot of them do have sugar alcohols in them though. So if sugar alcohol is something that upsets your stomach, which we are going to talk about in a little bit, just be aware of that. Okay, so taking a look at added sugars. Added sugars are usually found in processed foods where sugar has been added in for flavor versus natural sugars that are found in fruits, vegetables, dairy, and whole grains. So added sugars are actually added in as extra. Consuming too much added sugar is linked with elevated inflammation in the body, so reducing added sugar would mean that you're reducing that inflammation. So Canadians consume added sugars mostly in processed and prepackaged products, including cakes, cereals, yogurts, and sweetened beverages. And does anyone have a guess as to the #1 source of added sugars in Canadians' diet? It's one of the ones that I listed. It was surprising to me. So the #1 source is actually sugar-sweetened beverages. So soft drinks, energy drinks, fruit-flavored drinks, flavored milks, sweetened coffee and tea. A lot of those do have added sugars in them. Other food sources include cereals, flavored yogurt, sauces, granola bars, and baked goods. And then I've got on here where I have cereal and granola bars. If you see there, I've got aim for one that has 4 grams of fiber per serving or more, and then aim for less than 8 grams of sugar per serving. We call that the 4-8-4 rule. The other 4 in it is to aim for 4 grams of protein or more, because fiber and protein help to keep you feeling full, and your snack isn't doing its job if it doesn't keep you feeling full. So it's the 4-8-4 rule. 4 or more grams of fiber, 8 or less grams of sugar, 4 or more grams of protein. Okay? And then yogurt there, we've got, the suggestion is to try an unsweetened yogurt and then sweeten it yourself with fruit, applesauce, maybe a little bit of honey or maple syrup. Or you can actually take a flavored yogurt and mix it with an unflavored yogurt, and you'll be reducing the amount of added sugars because you've got that unsweetened one mixed in. All right. So the World Health Organization recommends less than 10% of total energy intake from free sugars, ideally less than 5% of total energy intake for additional health benefits. So this means based on a 2,000 calorie diet, 10% would be about 50 grams or 12 teaspoons of added sugar. If you were going for that 5%, it would be 25 grams or 6 teaspoons. So the best way to determine the source of the sugar in a product is to reference the ingredient list. So the ingredient list could contain all different kinds of things that represent sugar, and this is a list of a lot of them. I don't think it's comprehensive where it includes all of them, but some that I do want to point out are words that end in OSE, so that dextrose, fructose, galactose, and glucose. There's a lot of them, but OSE often means that it is some kind of sugar. It's like the scientific name for it. And then agave, honey, and maple syrup. I know that they are often considered to be healthier than regular sugar, but when it does come down to it, they are still sugar. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so just as a quick example, oh, sorry, do you want me to go back? That's okay, no problem.
I tapped it and it didn't click, so.
That's okay. No worries. Yeah, I invite you to take photos of some of the slides if you'd like, yeah.
Are you saying the sugars that end in OSE to avoid those?
So it's just so that you can identify them on an ingredient list. Yeah. Yeah, they're just other names for sugar. Because sometimes when you look at a list, you see all these different words that some of them aren't familiar. So just in case you're not familiar with them, the ones that end in OSC are usually sugar. So taking a look at this, oh sorry, do you have a question?
Yes, in lactose,
Yes.
I think theirs is the only place that you can find lactose food, like yogurt and cheeses and different things.
Yeah, usually, yeah. So lactose is also a sugar, and it's usually found in, you're right, like dairy products and that kind of thing. So if you are lactose free, there are some products that you can buy that are specifically for that. A lot of them though, it's just avoiding that dairy.
Milk is really hard to find. I stay away from milk.
Yeah, depending on I think like the severity of it. There are some milks that I believe there are some milks now that are lactose free. I want to say I want to say Fairlife is lactose free. Have you tried that one?
No.
I believe it is. I'd have to triple check, but I believe Fairlife is. If anyone else knows, you can let me know. Oh, yeah, I think that one has one as well. So there are some options, but like you said, sometimes they don't always taste as great, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, I know that they do have some lactose-free ice creams as well, but again, the taste of it, it's not exactly the same, right? Yes, it is. Yeah, unfortunately. I think they should be made, the same price, but.
The one thing that I was looking for is yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they had it on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs, well, the lactose was more. It wasn't on sale.
Oh.
I think that's right.
No, it's not very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I unfortunately, the price is out of my hands, but I think you're probably right. They should be made equally because you're going to use them for the same purposes, right? It's not. It's yeah, just the way it is, I guess. Yes.
When it says lactose free, is that only sugar free?
No.
Not dairy free?
No. So lactose is it's like a specific kind of sugar, and some people are missing the enzyme to like break down lactose products. So when it's lactose free, it's just usually for people who need to have that, but it doesn't mean it's sugar free. Lactose is just a certain type of sugar.
I think what happens with the lactose is the stomach, you get a sore stomach. I know certain ice creams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, not necessarily dairy free. Yeah. Okay, so just a quick glance at a granola bar here. So if you see highlighted, it's got 22 grams of sugar. And then when we take a look at the ingredient list, we can actually find, because if you recall, ingredient lists are listed by greatest to least amount of weight. So if you take a look at the ingredient list, you can find brown rice syrup as the first ingredient. And as you scroll through, you will find cane syrup, cane sugar, and then cane sugar listed again. So that's 4 different sugars that's listed in the ingredient list. So it's a little bit tricky because they've, instead of just putting sugar as number 1, they've split it up. So just something to keep an eye out for. And then we've got granola bar number 2 has 16 grams of sugars. So that one has no added sugars, it's got natural sugars. And when you take a look at the ingredient list, you see dates, peanut butter, peanuts, sea salt, and roasted peanuts. So the sugar from that is going to be coming from the dates, and that's a natural sugars that are found in those dates to sweeten them. I know, it's really tiny. I should have blown that up a little bit bigger. It's kind of small to see. Okay, so taking a look at artificial sweeteners. So this is something that comes up very often when discussing sugars, are these artificial sweeteners. So now artificial sweeteners can be a useful method in decreasing your added sugar intake. So let's talk a little bit more about them. They are low or no calorie sugar substitutes that are usually much sweeter than regular sugar. One that I want to point out is non-caloric natural sweetener stevia. So stevia, or most stevia products, actually contain other additives such as sugar alcohols to improve its flavor. So Truvia, for instance, Truvia contains the stevia leaf extract, natural flavors, but it also contains erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol. So sugar alcohols, they have less calories and carbs than regular sugar. Artificial sweeteners are usually no calories, and they are very high intensity in the sweetness. They're much sweeter, so you need much less of them in comparison to regular sugar. So several sugar substitutes have been approved for use in Canada, including acylsulfame potassium, polydextrose, sucralose, which is a very common one, and sugar alcohols like polyols. So usually those end in OL. So sorbitol, lactitol, maltitol, mannitol, xylitol, that OL usually is associated with sugar alcohols. One that's not would be isomalt. It doesn't end in the OL. So you want to follow directions on the label when using certain sugar substitutes in recipes, because sometimes some of them, they're a little bit different than just using regular sugar. They're more sweetness. If you want to use them in baking, again, follow the directions because they can't all withstand high heat. And when we're talking about gut bacteria, because that comes up pretty often, your gut bacteria plays an important role in your health. The composition and function of gut bacteria varies from person to person and can be affected by what you eat, possibly including certain artificial sweeteners. So this is an interesting area. We still need a little bit more research in it to confirm the effect. And then high intake of sugar alcohols can lead to some GI side effects, like what I was talking about before. So it's that sugar alcohol piece could, for some people, lead to gas, bloating, and diarrhea. You want to aim for 10 grams or less per day. An example of something where you might find sugar alcohols would be Halo Top ice cream. And that actually has 20 grams of sugar alcohols in one pint. So if you were to have a whole pint of it, you might feel that gas and bloating. You might have some diarrhea after. And that's likely because of the sugar alcohols in them. And then there is an idea that artificial sweeteners are unable to activate the food reward pathway needed to make you feel satisfied after you eat, causing an increase in appetite or sugar cravings. It's because they taste sweet but lack the calories, so the thought is that it's kind of confusing to the brain because you're not actually getting the calories that it thinks it's getting, so you might be left feeling hungry still. It's even been suggested that sweeteners may cause cravings for sugary foods. That said, many recent studies do not support the idea that artificial sweeteners increase hunger. A lot of studies have found that participants report less hunger when they replace sugary foods and beverages. But again, more research is needed in this area. It's still a little bit back and forth.
Under artificial sweeteners, the one with potassium?
The acetyl sulfame potassium, yeah.
Does that have any traces of potassium?
Yeah, I believe it does. I believe it has potassium in it.
It has to have high potassium levels.
Oh, okay.
So in the chewing gum, he has that labeled on there as a sweetener.
Oh.
So I don't know whether that's, and you chew gum all day long.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe it might be, if he has high potassium, it might be something to look into to switch up the type of gum that he's chewing. Yeah, I
asked the doctor if she didn't know. So.
Oh, okay. I would think it has some potassium in it, but because it's gum, you might not be getting a ton of it, but you would still be swallowing it, some of like the flavor down with your saliva. So I would, if it is, it's probably not contributing a heck of a lot, but if he does have high potassium, it could be something to look at switching.
Chewing gum all day long.
All day long. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, so here we've got some strategies just to manage your sugar intake. Reducing sugar doesn't necessarily mean reducing flavor. So when trying to reduce your sugar intake, it doesn't mean that you need to totally avoid it. Restriction often causes cravings, which often leads to overeating. So rather than restrict, we want to learn just how to manage our sugar intake, or our added sugar intake. So I'll let you take a look if you want to take a photo of this slide. This one and the next one it might be ones that you would like to take a photo of. Some of my favorites from this slide would be to mix fruit juice with sparkling water, or enjoy some fruity tea poured over ice or sparkling water. Just kind of gives it a nicer touch. It's almost like drinking like pop or like a fancy drink. So I'll just give a minute there. Grilled pineapple for dessert, sprinkling a little cinnamon on some grilled pineapple. Super, super delicious. Okay, and then I'm going to jump to the next one. So again, strategies to manage added sugar in baking. So you always have to follow some directions on this, because depending on the type of sugar substitute you're using, it may not do well in baking. But you can reduce by 1/4 to 1/3 of the amount called in the recipe. You can also substitute with, instead of a sugar substitute, you can use applesauce, mashed sweet potato, pureed fruit like bananas, dried apricots, dates, that kind of thing. Substitute 1/4 of the granulated sugar in baking recipes with powdered milk. So if the recipe calls for a cup of sugar, you can use 3/4 of a cup of sugar and then 1/4 cup of powdered milk. Amplify those sweet tasting spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger. Use unsweetened or lower sugar varieties of jam. Mix those with water to create like a sugar glaze for cookies or breads. Use vanilla, almond, maple, orange, or lemon extracts for naturally sweet flavor. You might want to double the amount in the recipe just to give it a little bit more if you are reducing the sugar flavor. And then replacing half or all of your chocolate chips with either cacao nibs or nuts and seeds. If you are choosing cacao nibs though, those are not sweetened. They are a little bit more bitter. So just be aware of that. Okay, and then one thing to note is you don't want to reduce sugar in yeast breads because the sugar is needed to activate the yeast. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we've talked about a heck of a lot of stuff today. So we covered what inflammation is, types of inflammation, foods that reduce inflammation, and ideas to boost the intake of anti-inflammatory foods, and then added sugars. Any questions or anything on this, I am happy to discuss with you. I'll stay back a little bit. We've also got just a reminder of our services up there. And yeah, ready for any questions. Thank you everyone for chatting with me. We had a good convo going today. That was fun. But thank you for coming and listening. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you next time at our gut health presentation, May 19th. Yes, right on there. Thank you.